In this video, we try to answer the question of whether a local firm can stay local indefinitely. In other words, can a local firm resist the temptation of turning into a multinational company? The short answer to this question is no. A slightly longer answer is hell no. But the really smart answer is, as always, it actually depends. But what exactly does it depend on? It depends on a lot of external factors. These external factors would exert pressure on our local firm in such a way that it would modify the existing competitive landscape in which our firm operates. And that would induce foreign companies to enter our home territory and compete with us in such a way that we would be essentially forced to compete at a global level. Some of these factors are land, labor, capital, skill, or entrepreneurship. The way these factors matter for a local firm is that if we happen to operate in a country where these factors of production are relatively cheaper, it might induce other multinational companies to enter our territory to take advantage of these cheaper factors. The same thing applies in terms of technology. Think of all the companies which are based in developed countries. Chances are these companies do not enjoy the same kind of cheap factors of production that we are used to here in Asia. But instead, what those companies might have is technological superiority. They might be able to leverage those advantages and achieve better efficiency than many cheap-cost countries. So when one such technologically superior country makes an entry into a cheaper production cost country, that forces the local companies there to play at a global level. Next, let's talk about market integration. Specifically, let's consider the commercial loan market. If banks are able to operate in an integrated economy or an integration of multiple economies, or if companies are able to raise debt capital in integrated debt markets, or if companies are able to raise equity capital from integrated stock exchanges or stock markets, that enables a company to look for cheaper capital and depend on a variety of capital raising sources, which provides them with greater flexibility and greater availability of money to expand. In most of the cases, a local company would not have those advantages. So, the ability to operate a market where greater integration exists, a company may be able to tap into capital resources much easier than a local firm. Alright, so most of the stuff we've talked about so far are pretty theoretical. But how does that translate to reality? Let's focus on a case study of a famous company, Cemex, from Mexico. Originally, Cemex was a cement manufacturer that happened to have a lot of other business interests. Being based in Mexico, Cemex naturally enjoyed low cost of factors of production. But after it started to face competition at home, and when its competitors also started to globalize, Cemex had to make a choice. They targeted their focus solely on cement. They trimmed a lot of the fat in their operations and became very lean. They invested in technology, partnered up with IBM, engaged in extensive training sessions for their manpower to make them technologically savvy and to boost efficiency. As a result, they were able to maintain their low production cost advantage, which was denominated peso, a relatively weak currency, especially back several decades ago. When Cemex realized that the only way they can survive the onslaught of other foreign companies or other global leaders encroaching into their market share, they had no choice but to shift outward. So they focused on their most natural neighbor, the United States. They successfully penetrated the US market, made a lot of sales, and eventually got listed in the American stock exchanges. Later on, they also expanded to Spain. Keep in mind, from the US-based stock exchanges, they were able to raise, through IPO, a lot of cash. In other words, they were able to tap into a global pool of capital in the form of equity. Afterwards, keeping the Spanish connection, they expanded to Spain, but here, taking advantage of market integration, they were able to do something very unique. they converted their capital structure from a short-term oriented debt, which was previously from Mexican commercial banks and denominated in peso, onto Spanish currency. Back then, the Spanish currency was peseta. This was before the euro came in. But here's the kicker. The Spanish debt was longer term. This allowed Cemex to be more flexible, to be more strategic, and they took full advantage of these factors. Being cash rich, they were able to acquire a lot of different companies, smaller companies, which would be potential competitors. Given their extensive investment in technology and partnership with IBM, they were able to integrate these smaller little companies or similar sized other companies within the Cemex umbrella in a relatively quick time, in some cases as seamlessly as 1 or 2 months, which for ordinary companies may take up to years. As a result, Cemex became known as the M&A expert. M&A here stands for mergers and acquisitions. So, in short, when facing the threat of being devoured by other MNCs, Cemex perfected the Darwinian evolution theory of survival of the fittest. As a result, the globalization success of Cemex is now studied extensively around the world in business schools. So, going back to our original question, can you stay local indefinitely? Our conclusion is you can temporarily stay local if you can dominate your competition. But then, if your competition is weak, other predators, let's say other MNCs, will come to take your lunch. This will force you, the local guy, to either compete at the global level or seek efficient production factors, which may not necessarily be in your country. So in other words, more or less, you will be forced to play a global game. There is one exception though. If you're dealing with a resource that is scarce and you are one of the few chosen people who has access to that resource, you might be able to get away with it. But, some food for thought. Let's say you have access to this rare resource and there's a global demand for this resource. Should you stay local? Think about it.